In this process, we're going to be taking a look at how we can migrate from Select Series 2 using simply the styles within the template library, or also Select Series 3 or 4, where we're pointing to native for our feature definitions and not necessarily element templates. In other words, we're void of the element template environment. To show you where we're heading, this is OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition, where we've opened up the Imperial training workspace. And just to show you basically the end product or where we're headed, we have, for example, if we concentrate on edge of pavement, we have a level called road edge of pavement. We have an element template under the folder structure linear pavement called road edge of pavement that points to this level that I'm showing here. We have then the feature symbology that's named road edge of pavement under the linear pavement road edge. That points to this linear template, which is shown here. And so the level is pointed to by the element template. The element template is pointed to by the feature symbologies. And then lastly, the feature definition, if we navigate down to our pavement, points to both a linear and a profile feature symbology. And so again, the feature definition goes to the feature symbology. The feature symbology goes to the element template here, and the element template goes to the level. And so what we're going to do is take a step backwards and learn how to migrate from a Select Series 2 environment without any element templates and make this work in OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. To begin the process, I'm opening up a Levels DGN library that is going to be opened in Power InRoads, where we can extract those levels to a comma-separated value file, and I'm doing this in an untitled workspace. And so let's go ahead and open that file, and in Power InRoads we can proceed to the level manager, and these are the levels that are in this particular DGN library. And so we will choose Levels, Export, select your path, and then the name of the CSV file, and levels.csv is fine, so we'll save that file. And this allows us then to have access to those levels when we bring that over to OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. And now we can go ahead and close the level manager. The next step in our process is to make an element template input file for our template components. And so to do this, I'm going to right-click in Power InRoads and select to Explore Show Hide to open up the Explorer. Go to the Preferences tab, and we're going to open our XIN file. We'll open that and then cancel. Then we're going to navigate to Tools, and we're going to go down to our Style Manager. Toggle on to Include Surface, and then we're going to select with our left mouse click the first entry. We're going to scroll down, hold down our Shift key, and select with our left mouse click the last entry. Then we're going to right click and select Export to XML. What this is going to do is going to give us an element template input file that will generate element templates for all of our surface components. Components element template input file, and we're going to go ahead and save that, and then we can at this point close the Style Manager. One important note on the exercise we just did, if you go back to the Style Manager, I just want to show something real quick, and I'm going to go down, for example, to like our road pavement entries. Road pavement, I'm going to select that and then edit it. If when we select the include surface and this is blank, I want to show why they would not show up there. Essentially, in your style if you go to your general and it has surface feature turned on, that's one requirement. But under the surface feature, it also has to be enabled for the components. And then once that is toggled on, it's going to show up in here and allow you then to make an element template for that particular entry. So double check in your style manager whether the components is turned on for template components. So now let's go ahead and again close our style manager. The next thing we have to achieve is to make an element template input file for our linear features and for our point features and our profile features. And there's no export process to do that. We can, for example, go to our application add-ins and we can toggle on to copy preference add-in. We can go down then and toggle on the name symbology tools add-in. And so if we do that, that gives us, for example, the option here to export the name symbology to a CSV file. But that is not an element template input file that can be read in to generate element templates. And so what we're going to be doing is using another application to read the XIN file and generate an element template input file. And so to do this, we're going to go ahead and exit Power InRoads. And in this video delivery, I have provided an application called Civil Element Template Utility with a couple of corresponding DLLs that go with the program. There's no install process here. You simply double-click the executable to process. And we're going to choose for our source an InRoads XIN file. And so we'll select that. And this is the XIN file that I'm using as an example. And what we want to do is export that to an Excel spreadsheet. It's going to give us a default name here of the file name and then a suffix underscore export. So we'll go ahead and accept that to save. Now we can close the application and navigate to our folder. And now we have this spreadsheet called Civil Features Imperial Export. Now, when we think about what this is really element templates. And so I'm going to rename this to element templates. Export. And then let's go ahead and open this file and take a quick look at it. So we look at the particular columns. We have template path or element template path, element template name, the level, the color, the style, the weight that is going to be assigned to that, and if it has an active point value, type, a text style. And over in this first column, we have categories. For example, default points. If we scroll down, we have default lines. Just like they're categorized as symbologies in InRoads in the XIN file, we've categorized those same folders here. We have default text, and as we keep going down, we have plan points, plan lines, plan text, profile points, profile text, excess points, and excess lines and excess text. And so all of the categories that are represented in the InRoads Symbology Manager are replicated here in this Excel spreadsheet. Once the Excel spreadsheet has been generated, we can then use that same application to make an XML file that we can then import those element templates into OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition, which we'll be doing shortly. And so this is a way that we can extract the symbology information, the name symbologies, out of the XIN file with their symbologies and generate that into an element template input file. So let's go ahead now and close the spreadsheet for the moment. So the next thing we want to do is begin to build our DGN library with our features and element templates. in Select Series 4 because Select Series 4 has an automated way of converting an XIN file to feature definitions. Although it won't be pointing to the element templates, it'll be pointing to the native XIN file for its symbology reference. We're going to deal with that in OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition in a later step. But to begin to build this in Select Series 4, I'm actually coming to my OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition workspace folder structure shown here, and I want to make a copy of the 3D seed file, and I choose to use 3D so that when we're assigning materials to our components in our element templates, we have access to the 3D visualization tools. And so let's make a copy of that seed file, and I'm going to place that seed file into my working directory. So I'm going to paste that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this file. I'm just going to call it features.dgnlib for simplicity. And we're going to actually have to import to this file a few times as we do bulk editing with Excel, which you'll see later. So I'm just going to make a copy of this and paste it so that we'll have that starting point later. And so just to recap, we have levels, we have our element templates for our civil features in an Excel spreadsheet format, which is here. And then we also have an element template input file for our components. Now what we're missing is an element template input file for our linear features. We made the spreadsheet, but we also need an element template input file. So what we're going to do is go back to our utility and run that executable again. And this time our source is going to be the Excel spreadsheet, and we will select the element templates export spreadsheet, open, and we're going to export that and make it into an element template input file. So we'll select that, and we have element templates export. Probably don't need both of those. And then we'll save, and that then generates the XML file. Sort by extension here. You will see we have component element templates, and then we're also going to have our linear, point, and profile feature element templates that we'll want to bring in. We have our levels that we can import, and then lastly we're going to be linking to the civil features imperial XIN file to generate our features. Now we're ready to begin to build our features DGN library with our levels, with our element templates, and our features in Select Series 4. We want to do it there first and take advantage of the ability to map the active XIN file and have it automatically create feature definitions for us. And so let's go ahead and open this file in InRoads Select Series 4, making sure to use an untitled workspace as shown. And make sure in your InRoads Explorer to go ahead and open the Civil Features Imperial XIN file is what I'm using in my example, but make sure you open your XIN file. And then we want to proceed to our level manager. And because we're in an untitled workspace, there should not be any levels in here right now. We're going to select levels and import. And we're going to select the levels.csv file, open that, and select OK to import the levels. Close the level manager, proceed to element templates, and in our element templates we're going to import two different XML files. So the first one is going to be our components. And it is imperative to leave this folder name as it is for components, and that way when we map the XIN file it will link to these. And so just to show you, we have the components set up pointing to the appropriate level, color, style, and weight. Then we also want to import our element template input file that we generated from our XIN. And so we'll select that and create that one. And so in this folder structure, this is going to be set up just like the name symbologies that we have in InRoads. And so, for example, if I look at default lines, you'll see all the entries that would have been in, for example, our XIN file. There is a glitch in the conversion utility right now that takes the XIN file to Excel and then from Excel to the XML, where if the color was set to by level, for some reason it's coming in at color 255. And so what I did was, for simplicity, because I'm doing everything by level, I just went into each of these, selected all of them at one time, and then changed the color back to by level, and that fixed it. And I am going to work on getting that application adjusted to correct that, but just to let you know, I also came into the plan lines and I did the same thing, set that back to by level, which is where it was supposed to be. If you had that set to a specific color, that actually works fine. But if you see the color set to 255, it was having an issue with the whole by level. Now, when we map the XIN file, it's going to automatically hook to these element templates for the components, but unfortunately it does not understand how to automatically hook up the element templates for the linear features. And so what I'm going to do is combine the default lines and the plan lines into a new folder called linear. And so I'll make a new folder here called linear. And in that particular folder, I'm going to grab everything in the default lines first. So we'll grab those and copy. And so we'll paste. And then also under the plan lines, sometimes the default will be overridden where they will specify specific plan lines. So I'm going to copy those second and paste those also into the linear folder. And anything that has a number 1, I know those are going to be duplicates. So let's just look at one for example. Let's say that we take a look at beam. Okay, so beam is set to bridge, beam, concrete by level. And if I go back up here, I believe it's to, let's go ahead and collapse these. We can sort these, by the way. Right click and sort children alphabetizes. And so you'll see the beam and the beam 1 are exact duplicates. And so I can go ahead and delete that one. We can check bearing and see if there's any differences there. You get the idea whether there's any differences or not. And so these are the same. And so just go ahead and clean up the particular combinations of the default versus the plan and the linear. And if they are the same, you can just go ahead and delete them. So let's see if we have any more. Here's one for existing terrain break line. And so let me go ahead and finish those up, and then I'll resume the video. So I have those cleaned up now, and so I'm going to go ahead and collapse the linear. And then I'm going to make another category here, another template group called profile. Go down to my profile lines, and you'll see that list there. And I'm going to go again, grab my lines category from my default. And so we'll get the default ones again, just like we did for the linear. We'll copy those. And I'm going to put that into the profile folder, paste. And then in the profile folder lines, we'll grab those, copy those, and paste those in here. And again, if there are duplicates, we can just right click, sort children, and we can begin to examine the duplicates again. But I'm going to go in and then clean up the combinations here. Make sure that those are all good to go for the profile category. So I'll pause the video to do that. And then lastly, I have made a points folder and combined the point features from the default plan, profile, and excess. And what I found is most of them were in the situation of, they were the same information in each of the categories. I do again want to point out that the whole color issue, if assuming that you're set up by level, anytime you see that 255 there, in my situation, I can come in and pick to change those that are. And so I'll go ahead and set that back to by level. And again, the application will get corrected to take care of that for us here shortly. So now let's go ahead and sort our folder names here. This particular Civil Features Imperial XIN file was the original information coming out of the XIN, which is untouched. And you might want to leave that there for a while, but essentially what we did is made a components, a linear, a points, and a profile where we took out the information that we needed, we combined it, and we organized it. Now, at this point, you may be tempted to begin to create subfolders here and move things around. I would suggest that you not do that yet, where we can do that in a bulk format in Excel, because when we line these element templates with these features originally, having this flat folder structure is going to be advantageous in our bulk editing process. And so for now, I want to leave these in basically a uniform or a flat folder structure, if you will. And you can, if you want to, expand each of these and right click and alphabetize them, that's okay. And so we'll go ahead and do that for each of our main folders and our profile. And that way they're at least alphabetized, which makes it a little bit easier. But just keep in mind that we want to keep these straight in the flat folder format for now. So now let's go ahead and close Element Templates and make sure that we have Project Explorer opened. You'll see here I'm going to pin this. And in the Civil Standards tab, we can expand down to our feature definitions. And right now there's not anything in there. If we right click, we have the ability to link our active feature styles. Well, that depends on what our active XIN file is in our Explorer. And so make sure in Power InRoads in your Explorer you have the proper XIN loaded, and then select to link your active feature styles. With this complete, we can examine what it has actually given us. And I'm going to start by looking at items with surface components. So if I go down to, for example, my roadway information, here's a good one for concrete. I'm going to right click on that and select properties. Get this out of the way a little bit. You can see that it automatically finds the appropriate element template for the surface for road concrete pavement. So that matches up with this particular entry under components, as you can see, that has the appropriate pointers for the level, color, style, and weight. And so because the element templates were under a folder called components, that's required, it found the matching name of the feature definition versus the element template name and was able to automatically connect those. And so that works well for components. But if we take a look, for example, at a linear feature, and we take a look, for example, at the linear default settings or the 3D, everything is pointing to native style instead of the element template. Now, we can, if we wanted to, for example, if we look at our plan view, we can go in here, for example, and delete grade ditch bottom, and then we can go in and go to our linear and go down to grade ditch bottom. You can see the list is long right now, and select it that way. But if we had to do that for all of these features and all of the properties in here, this would take quite some time. And so what we're going to do now is learn how to make these changes in a bulk edit environment using OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. So this concludes everything that we can do in Select Series 4 to prepare us then for what we're going to be doing in OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition for our final steps. So let's go ahead and close Power InRoads. And one final note to make on this, when we imported our levels, we wanted to make sure that we had access to our custom line styles, because sometimes the custom line styles will be assigned to the levels when we use by level symbology. And so even though we were in an untitled workspace, it's important that you have those custom line style resource files or DGN libraries loaded in that untitled workspace so that the levels can access that when it gets imported. And so I'm not going to show that in the videos. I would assume that if you're doing this work, you understand that concept. But make sure that when you import the levels and the element templates, the line styles are present in your environment before you do so. Now we're actually ready to begin to work in OpenRoads Designer, set up the appropriate linkages between the features and the element templates. But before we can open OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition, we have a couple of administrative variables that need to be set to be able to import and export feature symbologies and definitions, along with the ability to upgrade DGN libraries that have features or civil cells that have features. And so these two variables, these administrative variables, should not be used for the average user for production, but only for the administration. Go ahead and put those in your startup configuration for OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. I just made a CFG file with these two lines and placed it in the applications folder. You'll see the path here at the top. And go ahead and do that. And then we will then proceed to open OpenRoads Designer. So with the OpenRoads Designer initial dialog here, note that I'm going to be working with no workspace and no work set, which is important for this step. And then we want to open up the file that we have been working on in Select Series 4 called features.dgnlib. And when we proceed to open that file, it's going to let us know that it needs to upgrade, assuming that that administrative variable has been set. And so we want to select yes to upgrade this file. And so I have went ahead and opened Project Explorer, and I've also opened the properties dialog, and I've pinned those. And just to show you a little bit about where we're at with this upgrade, we have all of our levels that came across appropriately. We have our element templates in such a manner that we had them in our original file. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to do is remake this dgnlib file a couple of times, because we're going to be bulk editing outside of this product. And when we import everything, if the particular entries, for example, feature definitions, already exist, it's going to bring in another copy and give it a suffix of 1. And the same concept with element templates. Well, in our element templates file, we did a lot of manipulation in Select Series 4 where we made these 3 folders, we combined things, etc. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a new XML file that now updates our element templates to the correct one. And so all I'm going to do is, remember we had this components and we had element templates. I'm just going to overwrite the element templates export XML file. So we'll save that and we'll replace it and select OK. And then that will update that XML so that next time we import element templates, it's going to bring in all 5 of these folders. And so we won't have to manually bring in the components anymore. That's now in that XML. And so we can go ahead and close the element templates here and just take a look at some of the things that happened with our feature definitions. And so if we expand, where we're focusing is in definitions and in symbologies. And so let's take a look, for example, under linear. We have, under linear feature symbologies, we have, for example, in entries in here. Let's go down to something in roadway design here. So if I look at, for example, I think road edge of pavement is one I like to use as an example. It's not pointing to the default element template. And again, just to show you the manual process, I could come in to our linear and then go down to our road edge of pavement and manually select that entry. And I'm just going to leave this one so that you'll see how that looks later. I could manually select that, and then I could go down into the profile symbology, do the same thing. So we'll go down and I'm just going to down and pick one. We'll do the same one again for road edge of pavement so that you can see what that would look like, because we're going to do a bulk export here and edit this in Excel. And so if I go again to my default element template, and this time I'm going to go to the folder called Profile, and we'll pick road edge of pavement manually. And so then that fills that in. And then lastly, if we go down to our surface, well, the good news is these are already going to be done because they were hooked up in Select Series 4. And so if I just look, for example, at road pavement, you'll see that already found the appropriate element template. Now, if we go back up and look at the linear feature definitions, and let's go down again to our road edge of pavement, it's already going to find the linear and the profile feature symbology, so we don't have to go in and pick that, which is nice. And that is part of the conversion process that goes from the Select Series 4 to OpenRoads Designer process. It was able to do that conversion for you. Now, all of the former parts of this video were done in InRoads Select Series 4. You could have done that in InRoads Select Series 2, but to do the conversion from OpenRoads Designer, you would have to have at least opened that SS2 file in SS4 first, and then it would have converted from SS4 over to OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition cannot upgrade from a Select Series 2 file. It has to be a Select Series 4 file to do the proper conversions, and so just keep that in mind. And so that concludes basically the importing or the conversion of the file from SS4. So then the next thing we're going to do is taking a look at in our symbologies, hooking up the appropriate element templates to our linear and to our profile symbologies so that we can then have everything look correct with our templates and with our modeling. So to be able to bulk edit our feature symbologies and our definitions, we need to export those out. So we're going to right click on symbologies and select export, and I will call this first one symbologies. Save that, and then we'll go to our definitions and export our definitions. Call that definitions and save that. At this point, we can go ahead and close OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. And then in our utility for this particular video, I have another application called Features Import and Export. And so again, there's no installation for this. We just double click the executable, and we're going to pick both of those XML files one at a time. So we'll do our symbologies. We're going to select that as our source, and we're going to convert that to Excel. And so we'll call that symbologies export. We'll save that. And then we'll do the same thing for our feature definitions. And we'll export that to Excel and save that. And so now if we go down to our working folder, we have the two Excel files, we have the symbologies, and we have the definitions. We're probably going to also need to have our element templates. And so remember, we updated the XML file of our element templates. And so that is now the latest source. And so we need a new spreadsheet for element templates. And to do that, we come back to our element template utility, run that executable, And this time our source is going to be the XML file for element templates that we just created, which was here. So we'll open that, and we're going to export that to an updated spreadsheet. So element templates, we'll take out the second word there for export, save that, and then that writes then the updated element template spreadsheet. And so now we have element templates, feature symbologies, and feature definitions. And so we're going to start with our feature symbologies spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and open that. Our focus will be in the linear tab for now. And I want to kind of explain what it is we're looking at. And remember, we did make one entry. And so if we go ahead and scroll down, you do see that I made a mistake. It should have been road edge of pavement, not road driveway. But we're going to basically be completing this column. And so I'm going to show you how to do that very quickly here. So in this symbologies spreadsheet, on the path for the symbology, what we're referring to is in Project Explorer, the path that we would utilize to see that particular feature symbology. Well, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and take out the name and direction, the name that represents the XIN file, because that's no longer valid in OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. And you can come back here and put paths into these symbologies, but I would recommend right now just keeping everything flat to get everything hooked up with the element templates. Then we can come back and do folder additions later. And so then the feature symbology, what element template that it requires, the default element template, I'm going to show you a little trick here with Excel. I'm going to type in equal and then concatenate a double quote, and then we need to put in our folder name that we have in our element templates, which we made a folder called linear. Backslash, double quote, A2, close parenthesis, enter. And this will then create the appropriate element template path for our linear feature definition symbology for beam. And then we just copy that, scroll down to the bottom of our list, and paste. Now, doing so, we're making one very large assumption in that all of these element templates exist. In other words, we're assuming that the feature symbology name matches the name of the element template. And I can assure you that is not always going to be the case. The good news is when we import these feature symbologies, if that element template does not exist, it will get created. And so this can become a bit of an iterative process where we import these for the first time, let it make the additional element templates for us, and then we export everything again and fix those element templates it created and put in the correct symbologies. And so you may have to go back and forth a little bit, but this is a whole lot easier than generating the properties or completing these properties for these one at a time. Now that we have the linear folder structure taken care of for our symbology, and in terms of the rest of this, the annotation groups and the 3D element, crossing points, all of that is taken care of in the LearnPath training video series. This is just a supplemental video that talks about how we deal with workspaces that don't have element templates. And so everything else is covered in the LearnPath for my workspace migration to OpenRoads Designer. And so what I want to focus on now is in these symbologies, we have surface already taken care of for us. Other than this path here, again, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. And so in the feature symbology path, we'll take that and delete it, just like we did for linear. We also need then to take a look at, we have this 3D element template, and you'll see that it's components. I typically like to put that over here in the default category if there's not going to be any differences. And so if I cut that and I paste it over to here, And then we do have, for example, one of them that did not come across correctly, this bridge abutment, and so then that'll fix that, or you could have just manually typed it. And so that takes care of the particular element template path for the surface components. And then the last one is for the profile. And again, it's going to be the same process. And so we'll go ahead and delete everything in the feature symbology path. And we'll let that be basically right at the root level. And again, we can go in and put paths in later. Then we're going to use our concatenate formula again. And so now we can take that formula and copy that on down and paste. And so now we have our linear, we have our profile, we have our surface, and then the last one to do then is for our point features. And again, it's going to be the same process again. So delete. Here's our concatenate formula one last time. Enter. And then we'll copy that down to the end and paste. And we'll save our spreadsheet. So we have point, we have linear, we have profile, and we have surface. Actually, that should have been points. So if I go back here to this first one, put the S in, and then we'll copy that down, and we'll make that adjustment. And so that's now going to be the appropriate element template path. And so again, we'll save those changes. And so this is now the symbology will be pointing to the element templates if the element templates exist. And that's the one assumption that we're making. If the element templates don't exist, they'll get created. We can export again and then fine-tune those element template symbologies. And so we have point, linear, profile, and surface. Solid is going to be used later for subsurface utility engineering features, which are something that we'll cover in later training series. And so that concludes what we need to do the symbologies. Now we want to actually work on the feature definitions. So now over in the feature definitions spreadsheet, we're going to get rid of the civil features imperial.xin name for the path. And so both in the feature definition path as well as in the point feature symbology path, we're going to take that out. And so what we can do here is on the feature definition path, we can literally just select them all and delete. And then I can go over and select in this column the replace command. Then we just do a replace all. And so now we are having the right path to point to the point feature symbology. The point is an internal path or known requirement. And so we're just under our point feature symbology, we just see the word bearing or bearing DEP and so on. We won't see point, that's internal, but required. And so we'll save that. Then we need to go over to the linear and repeat the process. And so in the feature definition path, we'll take out the civil features imperial.xin. And then over in columns G and H, we have the linear feature symbology and the profile feature symbology. And again, we need to use that replace command. And civil features imperial.xin / and do a replace all. And then that cleans up those two columns. Save those changes. So we got points done, we got linears done, and then the last one to do is mesh. And so again, we'll come down to here. We will delete, and then we'll come over to our replace command, and we'll do it one more time, replace all. And so now we have everything hooked up and pointing to the right direction. And so we're going to save that. Now, at this point, on the linear, for example, if you want to come in and do some of the basics, for example, if you want to fill in a description field, I can come in, for example, and take the name, the feature definition name, just as a proof of concept here, copy that over to the description field and paste it, and that way that'll be filled in the properties. And so all of the properties in all of these tabs and all of these columns is taken care of in training in the Learn path for the OpenRoads workspace migration. Again, just as a reminder, this is all about bringing forth a workspace that doesn't have element templates, and how we can kind of get things going in the right direction. And so we're going to save the definitions, export, close that one, close our symbologies. Now we need to come back and update the XML files. And so if we go back to our features, import, and export utility, and I run that executable, I'm going to tell it this time I want to update my symbologies XML file using the newer symbologies spreadsheet. And so that will then rewrite the XML file for symbologies. Then we're going to do the same thing for feature definitions. And so we'll go pick the definitions file and update that XML file. So now what we've done is essentially updated the symbologies and the definitions. We also, in the earlier step, updated the element templates, and we have our levels. And so these are the 4 key files that we need to, again, recreate our features DGN lib. And so remember, I told you we would be doing this a few times. So we're going to delete the original features DGN lib. We're going to make a copy of the copy, which is blank, and that's really our 3D seed file. And so we'll rename that one so we can start fresh. And you could go in and manually delete everything, but that takes some time. And so I just kind of like starting fresh each time. We'll go back and open that file again with Connect. So we'll select Open. And we will repeat the import process. Now, just a reminder, make sure that if you have custom line styles assigned to your levels, that they are present before you begin this process. So we'll go to our level manager, and we will import our levels. And so we're going to go back to this folder, and we're going to grab our levels and import. Then we're going to go to our element templates, and we're going to import the element templates. And so this is our new combined XML file. So we'll open that up, bring those in, and just to check, you'll see that everything's just like we had it before. And just to point out, I remember I talked about how if the element template name did not match the feature symbology name, it would get created. Just to show you for the linears, our last entry there is this Z no plot, and so we'll see if it adds some in when we bring in our symbologies. So we'll expand features in our Project Explorer. We'll right-click on symbologies and import the symbologies XML file, which is here. And by the way, sometimes when it gets done, you may not have the drop downs and everything showing up. Just compress the file and it'll force a refresh of Project Explorer. It's just a little hiccup that happens every once in a while. But just to show you, we have all the symbologies again. And if I come down, for example, to road edge of pavement, which we've been using as an example, now you can see that it does indeed point to the appropriate element template. And so if I go back to element templates and I expand my linear folder and I go down, you'll see that it's going to be pointing to this road edge of pavement correctly. And so that's all now hooked up where it was not before. And by the way, if you have default set, then it's not necessary to set all these other entries. If you want something to appear differently, for in other words, you want to override what that line string might look like in your 3D file versus your 2D model, you could pick a different element template here. And so the default basically just says if these aren't selected, it goes back to use this entry. So remember I told you that we would see if it made any additional element templates. This is where we ended. Well, it did make some new element templates, and let me show you one example as to why. We were looking for an element template called E-Drain Culvert Inside, and so if I go back up here, E-Drain Culvert Inside, notice it's missing the dash between the word culvert and inside, and so that's why the feature definition name didn't match the element template name. And so these are things that can be corrected in the spreadsheet and re-brought in. Now, the other thing to note here is when it makes the element templates, it's not going to know what level to assign to these things. And so it also puts it down at the bottom of the list. And so you will need to consolidate these, make those corrections, and pull those back together. And whether you export that out to a new XML file and then do it in Excel, or you do it here, it doesn't really matter, whichever you find to be easiest. But you will have to, on these element templates it makes, you're going to have to complete those or fix the spellings however you want to do it. Okay. All right. So that's the symbologies, and then the last step here is then to go into our feature definitions, and we'll import those. And so here's our definitions. Select open. And so then in our feature definitions, we scroll down to, for example, our road edge of pavement. We've been looking at it. Indeed finds the linear and feature symbologies again because we correctly adjusted all the paths, and then we had manually added in the description field, so that shows up now. And so that completes the basically the round trip process, if you will, of those linears. And then we take a look at our point features, and you'll see that those are hooked up as well, and finding the proper point feature symbology. And then our components, we take a look at just any one of those. Those are also showing up correctly. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work left to do. You can insert folders to the symbologies, to the element templates, to the definitions. The only thing that I would caution is to remember that your feature definition names and your linear feature definition names, so you have your linear feature definitions and your mesh feature definition, those names are what's used in the template library. And so if we open up the template library that we used, and I'm not in a workspace, so expect it to not be able to find the library by itself. But if I go in and manually open the file that we're using for testing, you're going to see that all of my colors and features and everything now are present because we did the conversions properly. And so if I, for example, look at a point name here, you'll see that it has a feature definition called linear, and then under linear it's called road lane. And you'll see that it is folderized, and so putting these feature definitions in folders is a good thing. But just understand, you want to get your folders done properly before you go into your template library and save it, because the first time you come into your template library and connect, it's going to try to add the paths to the feature definitions for the points as well as the feature definitions for the components. And so it's basically a one and done type situation. And so when I go to close, it'll say, hey, do you want to save this? I put the paths in for you. And I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save it yet because I want to go back in now and modify some of these paths. And so the process is going to be basically repeating what we did. You can export your element templates to an XML, export your symbologies and your definitions to an XML, run the utilities to convert those to Excel, put in the appropriate paths that you want, and then come back. Now, I typically like to make one change myself manually. And so just to give you an example, let's say that I go back to my element templates and I go into linear. Let's say that under linear I want to make a folder called road or roadway. And so if I make a new template group here called roadway, and then under roadway I can go in and take, for example, the the roadway edge of pavement, which is here. And so let's say that I cut that one and put that in the roadway folder. Okay, so now that's subcategorized, if you will. Well, then if I make that change, I have to go back to the symbologies for linear, and I'm going to do, let's say we do the same thing. So let's say that I make a new folder here called roadway, is we're going to drop in road edge of pavement again. So I'm going to cut that. Don't copy. You want to cut it. And I'm going to put that into this new category here and paste it. And then let's rename that one to roadway. And so that's it for the linear feature symbology. Then we'll go into the profile and we'll do the same thing. So new category. So we'll cut this one, right click cut, and go down and paste that into that folder. And so that's the profile symbology, the linear symbology, and then on the feature definition, you could even do the same thing here. And so if I make a new category, which is here, So we'll cut it. We'll put it in here. Let's try to rename that once more. Roadway. So now if I go into that folder and I look at it, you'll see that it still is now finding the road edge pavement, and so this way it's looking under the folder. Same thing for the profile, so that checks out. If I go down then to the symbology, and I'll just do the linear here, we go down to the folder, expand it, and that element template, you'll see how what it did is when we renamed the element template, it broke this. And so for my example here, I need to manually go pick it again, and that is just the way that the program is designed. And so we need to go down to the folder, go down to the roadway folder, and we'll select it. And so then that reassigns itself to the appropriate element template. And so by doing one of these all the way through from the element template to the symbology to the feature definition, this will show you then what it's supposed to look like in that spreadsheet. And so we'll do the same thing then for the entry under profile feature symbology. So we'll go down to our roadway folder, expand that, and again we'll need to make sure that we have that element template picked now, and you can see that we need to go in and redo the profile one as well. And so if we go back to the element templates and we go to this time profile, and we make a folder for that called roadway, and then we take the road edge of pavement and move that, so we'll do a sort children here and paste it. Then we can go in and repick that. So profile, we'll go down to roadway, select it, and so now that's been reassigned. And so now that particular road edge of pavement has, for example, the new pathing structure that we want. And so now all you have to do is to go back and basically repeat the iterative process again. And so if we go ahead and collapse, we'll go to our symbologies and we'll export out to our symbologies. We'll export out then our definitions to our definitions. We'll go to our element templates and we'll export those to our element templates. And then we just run our utilities, convert those to Excel, and then modify the rest of the columns. And so that's just kind of an example to show you how to kind of organize things once you get everything hooked up. But I would suggest getting it all hooked up before you begin the organization process. It just makes setting those initial paths so much easier. So that concludes this training series, and hopefully it'll help you if you're migrating from InRoads Select Series 2 or 3 or 4 and you don't have those element templates yet. It kind of just gives you some tips to be able to get that migrated over to OpenRoads Designer Connect Edition. This certainly does not replace watching the learn path for the entire workspace migration, but it will help you at least on the features end of things moving forward.